Welcome to the podcast. We Do Recover with Jared Miller, your host.
And I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
This is a podcast about recovery from addiction.
We want to talk about what successful recovery can look like.
Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn.
Fellas, felons, ladies, lushes, boys, girls,
What are you doing over
they,
there?
thems, however you identify.
All right.
Welcome to episode
There we go.
123 of We Do Recover.
Everyone's welcome here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Man, it has been too long since we've been in the studio doing this thing, Sellers. Glad you're here with me today.
Yeah, good to be here.
Hey, doesn't it look nice in here, by the way? It's all cleaned up.
Yeah, it
After
does
months and months of little things I've been working on.
I'm not going to lie, Sean, there were some weeks there that I came in and I literally thought you might be on methamphetamines. This place was
Torn apart.
torn apart. It looks beautiful now. It looks like everything's rock and rolling. Today we're going to talk about, should students carry Narcan? Dr. Sellers sent me an article. The American Medical Association members are debating a policy stance. We're going to get to that
Yep.
eventually.
Yep.
We're going to have some,
We got some stuff between
nonsense
here and
before
then.
then.
Yeah, we got all kinds of nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely.
What we
So-
do best, nonsense.
We love the nonsense. Welcome to episode 123. We should have a good time. Hopefully this is educational, informational. We always come on here because we either want to provide you a message of hope, experience, strength, and hope, or we want to give you some
Impart a little knowledge.
education, right? Just help spread the awareness, increase the awareness of what we're dealing with in the year 2023. Let's jump into episode 123 is brought to us by High Desert Counseling. High Desert Counseling is a progressive substance abuse treatment facility with a practical approach. They offer day treatment, morning and evening IOP, continuation of care, and Prime for Life programs. Check out their website at highdesert.help or call them at 435-673-2899. Their facilities are located in St. George and Cedar City, Utah. We appreciate them sponsoring this podcast. Episode 123, Part 1 is also brought to us by Rise Up Supplements. Rise Up Supplements is a nootropic supplement line aimed at optimizing brain function and supporting mental health. They have two powerful blends. Mindful Mood helps decrease anxiety and enhance mood, while Mind Shift helps increase focus and optimize brain function. Place your order today at riseupsups.com. That's RASEUPS, At checkout, punch in podcast 20, podcast in all caps, to save yourself 20% off on your order today. We appreciate them sponsoring this podcast.
Yeah, we do. My favorite is Mind Shift, by the way.
It's good stuff.
Yeah, I suffer from ADHD, but refuse to obviously do any take any of the medications that are addictive.
Right?
That's me, squirrel boy. Like, I start something and I'm on that subject for 8 seconds, and then like I'm lost. I don't even get to where I'm going. So
We've seen that.
yeah,
We've been a party of that.
I like Mindful Mood.
Or the Mind Shift. The Mind Shift is good.
I said Mind Shift originally, but yes, Mind Shift is better.
So they work on the nervous systems, right? So think of, like Dr. Sellers is talking about Mind Shift. Think of that as the gas pedal. It's got a little bit of slow acting caffeine. It has some pick me ups. It helps with focus. It helps connect with memory and memory recall, higher verbal acuity. That's the gas pedal.
Yep.
Then Mindful Mood is like the brake. It's going to slow you down. It's got lion's mane in it. Helps with a clear, calm, controlled mind. So one works on the sympathetic, one works on the parasympathetic. You're the doctor. You know about this stuff, right?
For those of you that aren't completely aware, lion's mane is a plant, not the fur on the back of a lion.
Correct. Lion's mane extract.
No animals were harmed in the making of this supplement.
All right, let's rock and roll, Doc.
Yeah.
Let's jump into some new and goods.
Well, let's do new and goods.
Yeah. Why don't you kick us off?
Okay, so
No,
I'm
because
going to do my version of
That's
new
right.
and goods because I can't do new and goods.
The Doc silly seconds, baby.
Right. I got some Sellers silly seconds right here. I have two studies. Okay, I'm going to take them one at a time, but I'm going to be fairly quick. Okay, first was Mexican drug war. Somebody took money from our federal government to study the Mexican drug war.
Interesting.
Here's the conclusion. The Mexican drug war led to increased homicide rates in Mexico. So let's analyze that for just 1 second. If we do a little math here, X minus Y equals Z.
Okay.
In this particular study, X is the number of people that went into the Mexican drug war. Y is the number of people that came out of the Mexican drug war alive.
Okay.
And Z turns out to be the number of dead people. And here is a remarkable conclusion that I drew on my own.
without
All
spending
wars,
research money.
all wars will lead to increased homicide rates.
Oh,
I think that might be the whole focus of a war, kind of the whole purpose.
I love these seller silly
Yeah.
seconds because it's just like, how do people
Somebody got a
get
grant
the funding?
to do that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is insane, man. This is taxpayers' monies.
Yep.
Monies. I just
Stupid.
made up my own word.
Monies. You can say monies.
Monies.
It's kind of a word.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's baffling.
Yeah. Sean, you get that? X minus Y equals Z. So does it make sense to you, or is it
Monies.
way over your head?
Is that YS?
No, it's IES. Sorry.
I feel like
Okay.
anybody doing research on war, like you were saying, should come to the conclusion that
That war leads to increased homicide rate.
yes, X minus Y is going to equal Z.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been able to deduce that all on my own just from reading that study.
What you got for us next?
Second, this one has a little bit of a thing I'm holding till the end, of course. A physician in Alabama had heard stories that there was a certain spider whose bite was fairly dangerous. The spider had a black body, long spindly black legs, and a little red hourglass marking on its body.
Black Widow. No?
So, to study this, he decided to let it bite his finger, which he did. He then documented what happened for the next 2 days. 2 hours into documentation, he had to turn the documentation over to somebody else because he was hallucinating. His finger had turned black. He was throwing up. He was seeing things that weren't there.
I'm pretty sure when you're doing research, you're not supposed to do it on yourself.
Well, I think
did
that's
he not
the-
get any voluntary participants?
I think that's the silliness of the study, right? Maybe,
Well, no, I've
maybe
heard
don't-
some studies like that where people test the pain index of insects, and so they self-inflict a bite or a sting to figure out. And since they're the I guess what is it, the core subject? What do you call it?
Yeah, subject, sure.
And so they're able to say, well,
patient one,
this one works,
patient
this
zero.
one hurts worse, this one hurts less. So yeah, he was just doing scientific research like any well thought out person. would.
Well, let me
I
let
feel
him.
like this is out of a comic book. Like,
Let-
isn't this an episode in Spider-Man where one of the like goblin guys starts testing on himself and he turns into the Green Goblin?
Yeah, that's
let me let him off the hook just a little bit.
all right.
The study was done in 1933.
Oh, wow.
He did not actually know that black widow spiders did this. He had just heard some stories.
So it was a Black Widow.
It was a black widow. Bam. Yeah, for sure. It was repeated by a scientist in Missouri.
In what year?
yeah. What year?
I don't remember what year the Missouri one was. I don't know when that was, but I have. Sean brings up an interesting point because the one I did not bring up in this was a guy who decided to do colonoscopies on himself
Oh,
as
wow.
a study.
Doc, you're digging into
So-
ancient history back in 1933s,
Yeah,
boy.
I've heard of having your own head up your own, but
That is my Sellers Silly Seconds. 2 ridiculous studies. What is new and good in the world of Jared Miller?
I love it. New and good. I just accepted a position. It's the new old job. So I've accepted a position with Steps Recovery Centers. I start on Monday as the outpatient clinical director, clinical manager, basically the clinical gopher, get it done guy. So I'm pretty excited. That's new and that's good.
That's great.
Yeah. We also have my anniversary coming up.
Oh, whoa.
So we have a plan to go to San Diego, which is going to be super fun.
So your
Got some time coming
18
off.
year anniversary, right? Oh no,
Right, or 2.
2.
Yeah. We're still newlyweds technically.
Yeah,
I
I
guess.
like it.
So that's my new and good, man.
That's
Life's good.
those are some new and goods for
Yeah.
sure. New job, anniversary.
Yeah, buddy.
Congratulations on both.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Life's good, man.
Mr. Donovan.
The contractor called me back, and he says he's going to do some work in my yard finally. That's new and good.
Well,
Yes.
Sorry. I had two other contractors that oh, yeah, we'll get back to you. Never did. So I finally found somebody to do some work in my backyard.
That is a life you live right there. You got a call back.
Oh, my God.
Somebody actually returned his phone call.
Yeah. The guy's coming over tomorrow. I think he's going to start work next week. We'll have some backyard stuff. So, but it only took you call guy A over and over and over. You call guy B over and over and over. Guy C, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow.
Wow.
So,
You just did the same kind of math I did. A minus B equals a call back from C.
Yeah. But
Something like
this
that.
I don't think this guy has any links to the cartel.
Drug wars.
Pretty sure.
What are you doing? Are you going to bring in some boulders or just some, what you got going on, man?
I did a retaining wall last year with those big, 4 foot long by 2 feet tall cement blocks.
Okay.
Oh,
And then the rest of the yard is going to be diamond block.
Okay.
So, but I have 12 feet up that I need to terrace out and stuff. So,
Yeah, when you get that done, invite us over for a barbecue.
Yeah.
I don't know, in the
Way to go,
neighborhood I live
Jared.
in. Well, I gotta get the hot tub in first. Then you guys can come.
yeah.
There we go.
That's what you want to see is me in a hot tub. That's kind of everybody's dream.
Oh, sellers.
Hot tub time machine. Here we come.
Yeah, buddy. We've had a lot happen since we were on here last.
Yes,
the
for
last
sure.
one. I mean, it's been forever since you've been in the studio. That's why I'm loving that you wanted to do a topic today, which we're going to jump into. But
Sure.
man, how cool is the fundraising that we did?
Okay. That's a thing
Joe
we need to talk
Nestor,
about for sure.
Kalichi.
So we had a couple of concerts
Yeah,
that were
the Shannon J Scholarship.
part of the Shannon J Scholarship Foundation or Fund, and part of the Sobriety Foundation.
Yeah.
And the first one was. So you tell us about the first one because you were at the first one.
The first
I actually
one
wasn't
was-
at the first one.
Yeah, it was Saturday, June 3rd, up at the Ogden Amphitheater, and it was super cool. It was just, it was really fun. Surprisingly, a lot of people came out, and it was a really good event. I think that we're kind of getting past the COVID stuff, and more people are getting out and doing things.
Yeah, sure.
So it was super fun. And then the very next day, I felt a little bit bad for the artists because they got done right. They wrapped up and were back at their hotel probably 10:30 at night, and then had to wake up at 5 the next day to come down to St. George, a 5-hour drive later.
Yeah.
But then the next day we did a recovery concert for the Sobriety Foundation, Susan Peterson.
Down here at the what was that?
Cox
venue
Performing
called?
Arts
Cox Performing Arts
building?
Center on the campus there.
Yeah, so it was fun.
So I was at the second one.
Yeah.
Great shows, great talent. The audience was smaller than I would have hoped for sure.
We sold over 300 tickets, but I don't think that many people showed up.
I'm gonna put this out there. Okay, I got a little burr up my bonnet.
Yeah. Yeah. It was on a Sunday.
It was, and there was a lot of issues and a lot of reasons people weren't there and some excuses people weren't
Right. There was a golf tournament. There was a sober softball tournament. Yeah.
Okay, not we. I'm gonna go with you. You did a ton of work trying to put this thing together.
Thank you. And
We
that's true.
really want if we're going to be able to do this kind of thing in St. George, because the concert itself was really good. It was great.
Oh, it was
If
fantastic.
we're going to do an event like this in St. George, we need the support. We need a little more support next year if we're going to do it again.
Yeah.
We need a lot more support next year. The audience was good, but not big at all. And I get it. There were some obstacles and barriers, and that's totally fine. But, man, we need a little more support if we're going to continue to do this thing. St. George is not a big town, small community. And if we're going to bring artists like this, these are artists. These guys have albums and, lots of stuff. This is not some local guy that we brought in a guy from
We did bring in a
Pittsburgh.
local guy. But yeah.
We did. We had a guy from Tooele.
Uh-huh.
Sure, and he was
Clearfield,
awesome.
Clearfield.
Oh,
Yeah.
I got him in Tooele.
It's cool. Yeah, the cool thing was that I loved about it is each performer was in recovery, so they were able to share stories of recovery, their personal experience, strength, and hope, as well as provide entertainment.
The music was about recovery.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
And about addiction.
And for everybody
and it
that
was
did
good.
come, for everybody that bought a ticket and contributed to the cause, thank you so much.
Yes.
The sponsors, thank you so much. The people that did come, man, thank you so much.
Yeah, let's rally a little bit better this next year if we're going to have it again, because it's going to be hard to with that size of audience. It's going to be hard to repeat.
Yeah.
If we manage to do it, come on, guys, help us out a little bit.
Yeah.
We're trying to bring some stuff to Southern Utah.
Yeah.
So,
Should we jump in?
Okay, you're all uncomfortable now.
It's
but
okay.
I felt like it should be said. I want to keep doing this in St. George, but we need We
know-
need support to do it.
Susan's husband,
Mike.
said to me
believe.
afterwards, because I said, well, I think there's like around 100, maybe a little less than 100 people here. He said, did you know the first Sobriety Foundation event we ever did, there was 5 people that showed up.
Yeah.
He
And
said this is
that
the
was
first,
encouraging. He was very encouraging, and I
he said,
appreciate that.
this is the first Sobriety Foundation event in Southern Utah, and you had close to 100 people show up, over 300 tickets sold, and you had sponsors that signed up for it. He said you should be absolutely proud of yourself.
yeah, he was very
So I
supportive.
appreciate that, Mike.
He was here
Yeah.
from they live in Provo,
Yeah.
and he was down here, and it was pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
all right, well, we had a good time.
Great time.
That's all I know. Let's get into the subject, okay?
So
Subject.
why is this even a subject, Doc? That's one thing. When you sent it to me, I was like, wait a minute, right? Like, for me, it's, I guess, kind of a no-brainer, but it's deeper than that. Because, so the topic again was, the article you sent me was, should students carry naloxone? The American Medical Association members debate policy stance.
Okay, so that's what triggered the idea for today's podcast is the AMA with their delegates and mostly their committee members got together and was debating over whether or not they would want to support students in schools carrying naloxone. Now, I'm sure most of our audience knows, but naloxone is the medication that can reverse the effect of opiates.
Mm-hmm.
And again, opiates are anything that's a painkiller, whether legal or illegal, heroin, fentanyl, all the pain pills that are controlled substances, so oxycodone, Percocet, Lortab, Norco.
It's an antagonist that goes
Dilaudid.
on and it kicks off the opiate off the receptor off the brain. So if somebody's in active overdose and they're on their way to death, it'll go in, it'll kick their opiates off the receptor, and they'll revive and come back eventually.
Right. So one of the effects of opiates on a receptor is it depresses the respiratory drive. And if you so an antagonist kicks it off, exactly like you said, but doesn't turn the receptor on, so there's no effect. Like it just blocks it, basically.
Right. It's like a
So
good
opiates
goalkeeper.
can't get back on to the receptor. Any opiates still floating around in the system inside the brain can't bind to a receptor. And if they can't bind to a receptor, they can't really cause an effect. So
Right.
that respiratory drive suppression is how people die from opiate overdoses.
Naloxone can come in a couple forms. There's the nasal spray, and then there's the injectable form. So for some people that are hearing this, that they're like, well, absolutely not, because I wouldn't want my, child, young adult, adolescent to be carrying around needles and have to draw out some naloxone. No, okay? There's nasal spray as well.
There actually is. So there's 2 FDA-approved forms. One is a nasal spray, like you said, and then the other is injectable. Pharmacies are sometimes now compounding naloxone in a syringe. And so it's not a different form, but it's not an FDA-approved form either. Like
Right.
that one's not totally FDA-approved. Probably equally as effective, but not FDA-approved.
So essentially, it'll be kind of be like an EpiPen, only filled with naloxone.
Sure. Yeah,
Got
like
you.
that.
Okay.
Like that, which there actually, I did run across a study in preparation. So these topic-based ones, we actually do a little preparation for.
Yeah.
And some of the more story-based ones, we don't really have to prepare very much. But I did a little prep. You did a little prep for this podcast. And one of the things I saw is the non-FDA approved ones are not as effective. So the pharmacies mixing it up aren't as good. So it's better if you use the nasal spray or the injectable FDA approved.
The core of the problem, though, is naloxone, right, is technically a medication.
Sure.
So
Not technically.
it is. It's a
absolutely
medication, right?
Right.
So these students are getting in trouble,
Right.
from what I understood
So
from
there's
the
the
article.
debate. Right.
There are students that have it and they're getting caught with it, and administrators or the powers that be at their facility are basically laying out disciplinary actions for them having it on them.
I think the point is in most school districts in the United States right now, kids can't carry any medications on them for most schools. It's not true universally, but Some schools, they approve certain medications, but the school district and the school nurse need to know what medications kids are carrying on their person, and they're usually not allowed to carry anything, and sometimes not very much. Only
And
an
from-
emergency use medication.
From an outside perspective, that makes complete sense to me.
Sure.
Right? Like that makes complete sense to me.
Sure.
Like I don't want kids carrying
kids
around
bringing
just
meds into
random
schools
medications.
needed
Yeah, like-
approved. That makes sense.
Right,
It's
right.
not a bad policy necessarily. It's part of our society though too, right?
Absolutely.
So anyway,
So what are some of the problems or statistics around it before we dive into the
that's what I
actual
wanted to do
article?
is let's talk about the problem before we get to what the AMA is talking about for a solution. So we have been in this not even opioid drug overdose deaths were fairly stable from about 2000 to about 2019.
So for about 19 years.
For
they
sure,
were-
from 2010 to 2019, they were right around 70,000 overdose deaths a year. Suddenly in 2018 and beyond, there was a big spike in overdose deaths. Now, of those overdose deaths, when they were in the 70,000s, about 55,000 of 70,000 on average were opiate related.
Right.
And then there's this large spike. So here's some stats. The number of overdose deaths after being relatively stable for at least a decade, for about a decade at least, from 2019 to 2020, overdose deaths rose 30% in 1 year. We went from 70,000 to, hold on, I'm going to keep going. It rose another 15% from 2020 to 2021, up to about 108,000 total. So we went from 70,000 to 108,000 in the course of 2 years, where we had been really stable at about 70,000 for almost a decade.
Combined, that's
jump.
a 45% increase.
Big jump.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Okay, so
Right? Because 30 and then 15.
yep, no, 45. Well, sort of 45, but 30 plus 15 is 45. I don't want to do all that math.
Yeah, it's okay.
But anyway, it's a big jump.
Sure.
70 to 110, almost.
yeah,
Huge jump, really, right?
it's a lot of people.
Yeah. I want to break it down a little bit in the age group we're talking about. So among 14 to 18-year-olds, the jump from 2019 to 2020 was 94% increase
Wow.
in that age group.
18 to 24-year-olds.
Yep.
A
Now,
lot of young people.
Now, they're not a large proportion of opiate overdose deaths. In fact, the number one age group for overdose deaths and opiate overdose deaths in the United States is between age 35 and 44, which was a little surprising to me. I mean, I sort of had an idea of that, but it's kind of shocking, right? When
That's
you think of
not opiate
opiate
related?
overdose deaths, no, that's all overdose deaths and opiate overdose deaths,
Okay.
both. They lead both of those categories.
So yes and no. It's shocking on one hand. On the other hand, not really, because that's the Oxycontin generation,
It's a good point.
right? Like that's my
It's a
age
good
group. I'm
point.
37, and like the Oxycontin fever or the pandemic that was created by,
Purdue Pharma.
Purdue Pharma, Oxycontin,
Right,
right? There's a Hulu series on it now,
right.
right? Like
Good series, too, by the way.
that's my generation.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to point something else out that I think might be responsible as well. But another 20% jump from 2020 to 2021. So overall, that's a 114% jump in 2 years.
Yeah.
When it had languished around the same amount for a decade. Now, again, 14 to 15-year-olds do not make up a big percentage of the opiate overdose deaths. In fact, in 2021, when there was 108,000 overdose deaths, only 2,000 of them were among people aged 14 to 18. So 2,000 oh, wait, hold on. I got to tell you this. There's another stat. So there's 108,000 overall deaths, right? There was about 89 to 90% of those overdose deaths are opiate related. So most
Yeah,
of them, a
absolutely.
vast majority of them are opiate related, right? So we're about out of time in this first segment. We haven't gotten to the meat of the article at all, but take a quick guess. What's one of the factors in that giant jump?
Fentanyl.
Fentanyl's a big factor.
Yeah.
It's the OxyContin generation, but fentanyl is what drove the large increase.
Well, because
in
once they
overdose
started
deaths.
regulating OxyContin, they changed the formula. People couldn't abuse it as much, so then they turned to heroin, and heroin took a big increase.
Yep.
And then the next most powerful thing is fentanyl.
We're about out of time. I can't believe it. Well, we'll be right back after a word from our sponsors, and we'll talk more about this.
You are listening to We Do Recover with Jared Miller and co-hosted by Dr. Terry Sellers. We'll be right back after this short break with more of We Do Recover with Jared Miller. Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the Hilton Garden Inn.
High Desert Counseling is an adult outpatient substance abuse treatment facility. We offer multiple services including day treatment, morning and evening intensive outpatient services, continuing care, and Prime for Life. What makes us different is our emphasis on gathering all of the information before enrollment. We do this by offering a thorough evaluation by a credentialed professional. Once we have committed to you and you have committed to us, don't worry, insurance will not dictate your treatment. Lastly, the pretzel effect. We are a brief intervention where we connect our clients to community, mental health, and medical professionals to help maintain recovery for life after treatment. At High Desert Counseling, we strive to be the bridge from active addiction to recovery, community, and connection.
All right, we're back. Welcome everybody back. Part two, I don't know if you know this, part two is sponsored by the Hilton Garden Inn. It's always sunny at the Hilton Garden Inn. Did you know
Always
that?
sunny and bright, baby.
Yeah, even
Always
though it's
sunny and
raining a
bright.
bunch. You guys had a bunch of rain, haven't you, this year? Because up
Just
north,
today.
we've had a ton.
Oh yeah. This year, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Today
Yeah.
has been a rainy day, but most of the time it's gorgeous weather here.
Yeah,
It's crazy how it can go from like the 90s to rain all of a sudden.
yeah. That is a little crazy.
Yeah. We appreciate the Hilton Garden Inn sponsoring this podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
So you were diving into some statistics, you were sharing some stuff.
But wait, I
mean,
got
a lot of people.
I got to talk one more second about the Hilton Garden Inn.
Okay.
They have great amenities. I
You're
love-
stretching out the sponsorships
I
today,
love,
baby.
I love the Hilton Garden Inn. That's all I want to say. If you are traveling through southern Utah, give them a Google search. Give them a shot at your business. They will treat you well. The rooms will be large and comfortable, and the pool is amazing, and the staff is lovely.
It's true.
All right, I'm done stretching.
Very true. No, you're
more
okay.
stretching.
You're right. That
We're
is
good.
an important piece, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, check them
All
out.
right, I want
So
to.
here, real quick,
Yeah.
the statistics. We've talked about the statistics on this podcast.
Yeah, for
right.
sure.
They are
Many of those
overwhelming.
stats are not new to our listeners.
And yet I feel like the general public, there's not much movement. And that's why I was like, this article is amazing because hopefully it's going to spark some conversation and, you know what I mean? Ignite like some people in some places of power to do something.
right.
Now, do I think kids, high school, 18 years or younger should carry it? Frankly, I don't. We're going to jump into it. But I think that there needs to be something more. Like the facilities absolutely should be carrying it. So, okay.
Let me hit you with a few more stats because I really wanted to find the problem as it pertains to this age group. Okay, right?
18 to 23.
Right. Not or even younger, right?
Yeah.
Because they're talking about the AMA is talking about supporting it being in schools,
man.
all schools.
Did you hear about that 13-year-old kid from
Yes.
Connecticut?
Yes. So
13-year-old
go ahead, hit us with
kid from Connecticut passed away.
that. OD'd in school.
Yeah.
He died at school, I believe.
Yeah.
Right.
I
That-
mean, tragic. So that just goes to show, like, yeah, 13 people, it's out there.
Yeah.
And guess what happened? The officers that were on scene and the nurses got in contact with the fentanyl because there was like 40 bags of it sitting around and they started reporting symptoms of being sick. Like, we can't just ignore it. It's not going away.
Right, for sure. Well, so I wanted to define the problem a little better. In 2021, 1,871 overdose deaths in the age group 14 to 18-year-olds. So it's not, listen, I'm not, trust me, I'm not trying to say any death is okay. It's not the same sized problem that 108,000 deaths are. 1,800 total in the United States in 43 jurisdictions, but that was a big chunk of the United States. Like those 43 jurisdictions covered a large geographical part of the United States.
In what timeline is that?
That's a year. That's a
In
1
1
year. That's a
year.
1 year stat. Okay. Now,
Man, 1,800 human beings
yeah, but
that were less than 24 years old.
it's so that sounds 1,800 doesn't sound giant to me, but 1,800 is a lot of people dead, right?
1,800 sounds
Well,
giant.
And
to
I
me,
do
man.
want to say that one death is way too much.
Yeah.
Okay. But 60.4% of them, 1,090 of those deaths occurred at the house of the person that died. So not in school.
Right.
Nothing in school
Okay.
would have helped that. So you've eliminated 60% of the people. So only 40% now. You're left with 800 overdose deaths that didn't occur in the house of the person that died, right? There were potential bystanders. I'm going to tell you, well, I may tell you what that means in a minute. Potential bystanders were present in 66.9% of the deaths.
So
So
people
someone that
standing
could
around.
have helped, right?
Yeah, right.
A kid that overdoses, whether at school or at home or at a friend's house or whatever, if there's no one else around, naloxone's not going to work because an overdose guy can't give himself naloxone. Okay.
Right.
Now, and one other interesting stat is, I know I wanted this. Oh, it's right here.
This is heavy, man.
Naloxone administration was documented in 563 or 30.3% of the deaths.
So they tried.
So some people had naloxone. It didn't prevent every death. So you've now narrowed the problem down to, again, a dead kid is too many dead kids. But it's not the giant-sized problem. One death is a giant-sized problem, but we're not talking about thousands and thousands of kids. We're probably talking about 300, 400, 500 kids that might have overdosed on school grounds or taken the drugs off school grounds and then come onto school grounds. And then of that number, probably 30% of them would not have responded to naloxone or might not have responded to naloxone. I shouldn't say would not have, but
Yeah.
Okay, so now the problem. I've defined the problem,
Yeah.
I think.
I think back to what you said, one's too many. Like we have defibrillators, people get trained in CPR. Like why is it not like mandatory, especially given these statistics,
Yeah,
right?
that's an interesting point. Now I want to talk about points,
Okay.
right? Opinions and points a little bit. Well, I want to read the article some, but I want to talk about opinions and points. And one of mine is that defibrillator point. If you see a kid lying unconscious in a classroom and your first thought is hit him with naloxone, you may have wasted time in getting to the defibrillator, right? Because not all kids that are laying unconscious in a classroom are opioid overdose.
True.
Right? Maybe he had a seizure. Maybe he had a heart attack, which does not happen in 13-year-olds very often, but could. There's a bunch of other causes of death that aren't opiate related. So a lot of people, if we start sticking naloxone in schools, might think of the naloxone first and maybe hesitate to use the defibrillator.
However, naloxone doesn't take long to take effect.
No.
It doesn't hurt the person or
Right.
harm them whatsoever if it's
excellent
not.
point. There's really no downside
Right?
to administering naloxone.
And if you've been trained in naloxone, they tell you to go up and, try to get them awake, the chest rub, or you put your finger right underneath their nose and you go back and forth. It's a little uncomfortable, but if it's somebody that's not overdosing,
right.
technically, you know what I mean? Like most of the time you'll get some kind of response out of them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Let's approximately, this is my last stat. I think I'm going to do it for now. Approximately 41% of the deaths had documented mental health history, including mental health treatment, diagnosed depression, or suicidal or self-harm behaviors. Some of these overdose deaths are intentional, not accidental overdoses. There's a few people that are actually trying to kill themselves.
Yeah. Active suicidal ideation,
For sure.
not passive. I think anybody that's a heavy opioid user has passive suicidal ideation because they know the risks. They just don't care, which is a mental health concern.
90% of the opiate overdose deaths have fentanyl involved.
Did you know that even if you administer naloxone and you don't have a second or a third dose,
Right.
it can go in and kick the opiates off the receptor but fentanyl's so powerful that it goes off for a minute, stays in the bloodstream, comes right back on. So they can technically come back and then go back under again.
This would be why the 30% of people that had naloxone in their system still died.
Fentanyl is scary.
Super powerful.
Let's get to the article.
Okay, let's go. I didn't actually print off an article, but I've got it right here. So if you want to start us off, please do.
So this article is brought to us by webpagetoday.com. The title is Should Students Carry Naloxone? AMA Members Debate Policy Stance. And in this, they debate a bunch of other stuff, but the stuff that we care about is under the subtitle Naloxone in Schools. You want to go ahead and start reading that?
Yeah, so they quote a number of AMA delegates, which are physicians that have been elected to positions of authority within the American Medical Association. They start with quoting Ken Serta, who is a delegate for the American Psychiatric Association representing the Section Council on Psychiatry. He's the guy that introduced the resolution calling for the AMA to... Now, the AMA is not doing this. They're just trying to decide whether they should advocate for it or not.
He tabled it, right? He put it in discussion.
He is... Well, tabled
Not
means
tabled.
something different.
You're right.
Because it's the opposite, right? He's the guy that brought it to the table.
He called it to their attention.
Right, for sure. He introduced a resolution, calling for the AMA to advocate that naloxone for opioid overdose reversal be available to school staff, teachers, and particularly to students for opiate overdose deaths. He did acknowledge that the idea of students carrying naloxone is controversial, but he argued that students have been dying from overdose in high school bathrooms. The idea, this is an interesting quote here. This is a quote from him, from Ken Serta. The idea that a school nurse, perhaps in the 4 hours that they're there, would be willing or able to get to a student, before they die is just fanciful. I take a giant exception to that statement. I would say there are very few school nurses that wouldn't be willing. Are you kidding me? Hey, there's a dead kid in classroom 3. I got paperwork. Come on.
I think what he maybe is getting to is like, I don't know.
His classmates are willing to pop out a syringe before the school nurses. That's a bad school nurse to me.
Yeah.
That's a bad school nurse.
Yeah.
Right? This is a part of the school nurse's job. And I also debate that in high schools, I don't know this. This is an opinion for sure. School nurses are there for longer than 4 hours a day. They're there when school's in session.
I don't ever remember a school nurse.
Well, we
back
didn't.
when
I
went to
didn't
school.
have them growing up, right?
Yeah, man.
But they're on almost every school now
Yeah.
because of today's society, right?
Then again, I didn't really swing by the administrative office too many times. I tried avoiding that place.
You were called in. You were called into that office every day of your schooling. You don't lie to me about that. All right. School districts, both in Los Angeles County and Arlington County, Virginia, have actually already chosen to allow students to carry naloxone, he said.
Courageously.
And he called it courageous.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna let that be. That's fine. Arguing that the AMA needs to take a leadership role in this issue. I'll give him that. I'm going to read one more paragraph, and then I'm going to let you do some stuff.
So I actually, if you don't mind.
Oh, please do.
I'm going to jump in.
Yeah.
G. Ray Callis, MD, speaks on behalf of the Texas delegate, saying he supported the resolution. Hang with me, page turn. One caveat, remove students from the solution.
So he's saying he doesn't want students carrying it.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is one of the delegates who opposed students carrying it.
And what a cool name. Callis, kind of like Dallas, and he's from Texas.
Ray Callis from Dallas?
Right? Like, man,
G.
that
Ray
guy's got
Callis?
it going on, dude. You know what
Hi,
I mean?
my name's G. Ray Callis from Dallas.
Like, one of his parents was probably a country singer, and the other one was, like, really into rap. And so they, like, you know what I mean? Ray Callis from Dallas. Actually, he's from Arlington, but I don't know.
That's Dallas.
Is it?
It's essentially Dallas. That's
Okay.
where Texas Stadium is.
I'm
The Dallas Cowboys play at. It's in Arlington.
I'm educated. Smart. SMRT. All right, let's rock and roll. In no way do we condone or encourage use of drugs in our schools, but we do want protection with the use of Narcan.
Keep going with
Callis explains. What we're recommending is that all schools should have it in facility areas.
faculty areas. Sorry.
Thank you. Faculty areas and in their nursing offices because it does save lives, he said.
Okay, so this
So
guy's
let's pause
against
right there.
students,
Yeah.
but he is for naloxone in schools. He wants it kept in the faculty, in like the staff offices, and he wants it in the nurse's office. Okay.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to make a joke of this topic because I realize it's a pretty funny topic, but I always like to be a little lighthearted. And I'm a fan of Ray Callis from Dallas, baby. Like I like that.
Can
Because
Can we call him by his full name though? G. Ray Callis.
G.
from
Ray
Dallas.
Callis from Dallas. That's where when I read everything, and we got more we're going to get to, I agree with that. I mean, from an outsider's perspective, we work in this field every day, Doc, right? Like we deal with Narcan every day. I can't tell you how many times I've done Narcan trainings. I have one in my car. I have one at work, 2 in my car, 2 at work.
Right. Got one in the briefcase.
Right. Like I'm ready. You know what I mean? Locked and loaded because I expected that's the field we work in. Not everybody works. So we might be hyper focused on this.
For sure.
And to be completely honest, I can see from an outsider's perspective, the everyday, Joe and Susie and their family, it does kind of send a message of like people are using, like, I don't know that it condones drug use, but it's like the expectation. And at the same time,
Let's spend a minute on that because I think we
I
got
have
more
some
to do,
cognitive
but
dissonance. Yeah. And at
let's
the
spend a
same
minute
time, I
on
can
that.
also see.
Does that condone drug use?
Sean, you know what? You're a professor here at the Utah Tech University. Let's get your
Kinda.
take on, and you're a normie, right? Like you don't do this every day. What's your thoughts?
I don't know how to spell Narcan when we were doing the show, so
That tells you where he's at.
He's an expert.
I think having it available on premises is fine, but I don't see a reason for normal people to be carrying around Narcan. Just as a normal person's not going to be carrying around a defibrillator or a life preserver or whatnot. It's something that is unique to your world. And you're like, hey, I have this everywhere, but that's the world you live in. And then there's, I think the rest of us, the other 90% of us. What's the percentage of drug users in America?
7%.
7%? Okay, so the other 93% of us have to worry about.
Well, no. Sorry, 7% was a very old stat, by the way.
Okay,
it used to be 7.
We'll say 10.
Yeah, 10.
All right, so 90% of us have to
adapt.
Be aware of this.
Okay.
Because it sounds like, I mean, I'll say this as blunt as possible, and I mean no disrespect. It's your problem.
And I can see people's perspective that way.
And
it's a perspective.
And at the same time,
but at the same time,
it's a commonly held perspective.
But I'm not carrying around EpiPens. I'm not carrying around insulin. I'm not carrying around, as I said, defibrillator. I'm not carrying around these other things where a small portion of the public might need them. I've never run into a situation where I've had to
use an
EpiPen or CPR or a defibrillator. So it's a super small percentage from my point of view that it would be used. Now, if you are a student, I think if you are a concerned student and you are amongst friends that have issues, I think that would be a wise thing to be like, hey, my friend is on and off stuff. I better carry this just in case. Just like a concerned mom with a kid with a peanut allergy would carry the EpiPen. But I think for the random stranger,
you don't think that mom can demand that his classmates carry an EpiPen?
No.
Yeah.
Sean, I know you have a random asthma puffer laying around this office somewhere in case some kid comes in here having an asthma attack.
You found me out. Yeah. So I think those things are. Yeah. If they're in a place that they are accessible, you say like a nurse's office. Obviously, a high school is way different than a college environment.
Right.
But
because in colleges, students can carry their own meds with them.
So
for
here,
the most part,
we have a defibrillator here in the building.
Right.
But I know where it's at because it's next to the bathroom. But it's like, when am I going to use that? And then when I do, if I have to use it, that small percent of a chance, now I have to take extra time to figure out how does this work. Now I understand the same thing with the Narcan, same thing with other things. Right. But I think for the majority of the population, we're not prepared to deal with a small percentage of a problem that might happen.
You bring up a point that hit me a little bit is, first of all, defibrillators comparison to Narcan. There's some good comparisons, but you can't have everyone carrying around a defibrillator because they're big, right? But the comparison to an EpiPen,
or
they're the same size, right? And I did not look up, and it would have been an interesting thing to look up, how many EpiPens are used in schools these days? Like, what's the number of times that EpiPens have saved lives in schools these days? So
And is that a required thing? So if you're in a high school or a K-12, does that mean that every teacher needs to have
Right,
an
an
EpiPen, an inhaler, a bulletproof vest, and a gun in her desk?
well, you can argue the bulletproof vest and the gun more than you can the EpiPen.
Yeah. So there's that slippery slope argument. But does the public educator need to have all these things available?
Yeah.
Then do they need to be trained on that? And then that's not even accounting for the upper, college stuff.
Yeah. So here's the other point that's inherent in that is, I think if you allow or if you allow kids to carry Narcan in a college environment, they're mature enough to understand the implications of that. If you allow it in junior highs, I think slightly greater percentage of the junior high minds would see that as almost condoning drug use.
Yeah, I concur. I agree with that.
If a child is walking around with an EpiPen or an inhaler, I think they are prepared to use it.
Yeah.
So I think that's a trained individual who's like, hey, I need this.
Yeah.
And so obviously you could apply that to the Narcan.
Yeah.
Or the friends of that individual. I've seen that where friends will carry the EpiPen and whatnot. But yeah, if you start getting down into middle school and grade school, where is that line of these children need to know how to use it compared to?
Well, that's the other thing you could talk about is the routes of administration. Do you want a kid carrying around a needle at all?
No.
At all.
No.
Depending on how old the kid is, the answer might be different.
If I could dissect this, I would do it like this: 18 and older, college age kids. We're done with that, right?
I think
because
that
they're
might
old
be a
enough.
different
Let's cut that
argument.
completely out of the equation.
Right.
Adolescents, people that are, the teens. I agree with Sean from the outsider's perspective. Like, is it everybody's problem, right? I hear that from a lot of.
No.
I get that. I understand that.
Yep.
And at the same time, I do think that facilities should carry Narcan because it's getting to be the point where a massive amount of people are dying because of this. And it's not going away. And if we want to decrease these numbers, we have to do something about it.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, and I get it. Like it is. It's kind of it might be an annoyance to some people.
Yeah.
And I promise you, if you are a human being and you see another human being dying, the annoyance of that 10-minute training will be well worth it if you can administer Narcan and save somebody's life.
For sure.
That's my position on it.
Let me move on.
I also, real quick, want to say, if a student is caught with Narcan, I think that there should be a social worker brought in to investigate why he feels the need to carry it and ask some questions to be able to get him or his friends some help. Right?
Yeah,
like,
but
let's
see,
don't
now
treat this as a punishment. Let's get curious
But
and
it feels
concerned.
that almost feels a little punishing. I got to see the social worker now because I'm carrying Narcan.
Well, I think there's some questions there that need to be answered, right?
And should that be a parent thing? I'm allowing my child to carry Narcan
Yes.
because he's hanging out with a bunch of druggies.
Right. Right.
Any parent, I think, is going to.
Can you expect a 14, 15-year-old to rat out his friends? And does he look at it that way? No. Yes, he will look at it that way. And
small
will he do
small percentage that will actually, I think, hold it for a friend in a responsible way. But that percentage is so much smaller than the actual OD.
Right.
You can get into the weeds real quick on this.
Okay. I'm going to go on then. Steve Orland, who is a physician who's an alternate delegate to the AMA from New Jersey, called for keeping naloxone in the school nurse's office or behind glass cases similar to defibrillators. It should be as widely available as possible, but not with students carrying it around in school, he said. And then there's one more. Karen Pierce, who's a delegate for the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, took a slightly different view. Like it or not, young people are already carrying drugs, and currently they are often removed or suspended if they're found to be carrying naloxone. Now, we've already talked about this. Mm-hmm. She goes on to say, I have too many dead kids. Okay, you don't have any dead kids. I don't like that quote a little bit, but I know what she's saying. Okay. I have too many dead kids, and I wish they would have had a Narcan on them to be able to at least get the minutes they needed to get help.
How many kids that are addicted to drugs are going to be aware enough to say, oh, I better carry my Narcan just in case?
Oh, yeah.
Being able to say, hey, let me have this on my body just in case. And then on top of that, if I'm in a situation where something is happening, is Is it a Narcan? Is it an overdose? Is it a
Right.
heart attack?
Right.
Is it an insulin thing? Is it
Right.
an epi? I don't know which. Do I just hit him with everything?
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah.
point.
Start,
Just
start throwing the
poking
kitchen
and,
sink.
poke, prod, shove up the nose. Clear.
Yeah.
What's it going to be? Because
For sure.
if I'm not educated in
For sure.
those four of whatever, how many?
How many parents of drug users are going to be responsible enough? Because if you got a 13-year-old drug user, I'm going to posit that perhaps the parents aren't great in that family. How many of those parents are going to be responsible enough to say, hey, you need to be carrying Narcan to their 13-year-old drug-using kid?
See, I think that in both those scenarios, there's a lot of assumptions being made. I don't know that a ton of kids are carrying drugs. Like, sure, I think that a lot of,
All the ones that died were. Every
they're-
single one of them.
For the most part, though, when you get into like high school age kids, and that's why you found the statistics were way lower, right? Between that age category of 18 and 24, most of the time it's smoking pot and it's drinking alcohol.
Right.
So yeah. And anyways, you can get into the weeds real quick. I think
More weeds.
for there to be, I love this article
We should talk about
because
weed.
it's starting some kind of conversation like, who takes a stand and how do we implement this on a functional level that everybody's going to be at least somewhat okay with?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Okay. Well, you want to keep going?
Yeah, we got about a minute and a
Oh,
half
jeez,
left.
I didn't realize we were out of time. We're out of time. Let's try to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Well, give me your opinion. What should we do?
I think that like I said, I think that when it comes to adolescents and teens, I think that the facilities, the education system should have it in at least a nurse's office, the principal's office. So if you come into a situation where you have a kid that goes limp, you get on the phone with 911, you go through the different things. And if it ends up being that it is an opioid overdose, you have the tool to be able to help.
I would. My opinion is yes. Let's have it in schools. I don't know about letting students carry it. I kind of hesitate with that for sure.
And I say in the college environment, like a glass case in the hall where it's accessible, but in a high school environment, I think teachers
Nurse's
or
office
nurse,
or teacher,
and we
yeah.
pay the teachers more so they actually know what they're doing in the way of that.
Yeah,
So give them
I
some
like
extra
it.
money, and then they can say, okay, then we have this extra education because now we're having to take care of a possible dead kid.
I like it.
I have a wife that would strongly love that and agree with that.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. There's a lot of debate here, lively debate. Had a good time. Thanks for listening. This is episode number, I can't remember what episode number. you just said.
123.
123. We do recover with Jared Miller. I'm Dr. Terry Sellers, your co-host.
Thank you for joining us today on We Do Recover with Jared Miller.
Help us spread our message of hope. Like, comment, and share.
If you have any topics or ideas for future shows, please share that on our Facebook page.
That Facebook page is We Do Recover with Jared Miller. If you or a loved one needs help, please reach out to us. Again, thank you for listening.
Brought to you by High Desert Counseling, Rise Up Supplements, and the St. George Hilton Garden Inn. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of its sponsors. This has been a production from a podcast studio.